When you seen someone murdered in prison, man, did it affect you when you went home from work?
No, I was kind of, I don't know what the word, kind of cold to that. I mean, just another day at work. Same as when you see one that's committed suicide. I mean, try to separate yourself from it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, definitely leave a comment, share the video. I think you guys will like this one. Got a special guest coming on. The other day, I interviewed White Boy Lockdown Radio. He was in prison in Florida. And today, I'm bringing on a captain. A guy that was a captain, started out as a regular CO. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you who he is and how long he worked there. Keith, tell the people about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Keith. I worked in the Department of Corrections in the state of Florida for 25 years, retired as a captain in 2019.
So let me ask you this. You started out just as a regular cop, right?
Yes, sir.
Security. What was it like your first day walking into a prison in Florida?
Well, it's not like you thought on TV. I assumed everybody was in cells. So I walked down the middle of the compound, and there's 1,000 inmates just walking everywhere. Kind of overwhelming on your first day.
So the other day I did a live and I showed some pictures from prisons down south out of Alabama where dudes were stabbed and, guy was stabbed in his back while he was sleeping. I think Alabama's a really dangerous place, but I think Florida and Georgia, places like that are too. Was it dangerous when you worked in there?
You had the average, stabbings when I first started, but I think it got a lot worse probably about the middle of 2000, 2007, 8, 2010, somewhere in there.
You seen people get stabbed in there?
Plenty of times.
You seen people killed in there?
I've seen several dead people.
I want to ask you that from a cop's perspective, right? And I usually don't use the word CO, and I don't really use the word inmate. Let me add, because I don't think it's corrections, man, and I don't think that inmates, and I just think we're prisoners. But when you seen someone murdered in prison, man, did it affect you when you went home from work?
No, I was kind of, I don't know what the word, kind of cold to that. I mean, just another day at work. Same as when you see one that's committed suicide. I mean, try to separate yourself from it.
Were you able to separate yourself from it?
Yes. I mean, that's just part of the job. It's as hard as it was.
That's sad, right? Because I feel the same way. I had seen so many people stabbed and people killed in prison, and it affects prisoners and it affects cops the same way, where it's just another day. It gets to the point where just another guy gone, right?
I would say that's the sad part, where you can just walk out or even make a joke about it. I mean, you go in there and you found somebody committed suicide, you do all your paperwork, you wait for them to come and do their investigation, they take the body, you go on about your regular day of feeding chow or whatever else you got to do. Go home at the end of the day, and that's the last conversation about it.
You just got to be numb to it, huh?
Yes.
What's one of the worst things you've seen working? I mean, you worked in there 25 years. I'm sure you've seen some bad things, right?
Yeah, I've seen, I would say I hadn't been there long. Had an inmate get stabbed right between two of our dormitories on the sidewalk. He bled out. They stabbed him in the neck. He was trying to get out of a gang. And he walked off the rec yard, died right between the two dorms. And, back then in the early 90s, I would say 2 hours after that, we had the rec yard back open compound.
Someone gets murdered, they lock down for a couple hours, get them off the compound. And
that was in the early 90s. Now they're going to be locked down for a while.
Why do you think people are running around, like stabbing people like this? And why is there so many weapons? Is it security's lacking? Is it the administration?
Back then in the early 90s, we didn't have a lot of stabbings, and we had plenty of officers. We had open bay dorms at the prison I started at. And most times on evening shift, I worked evening shift all the time, 3 to 11. So most times there, we'd have a sergeant and 3 to 4 officers in each building. I mean, we had plenty of help back in the early 90s, and we had a chance to search, get the weapons off the compound. And then as things progressed, we got fewer and fewer staff members.
I see these kids in these prisons with cell phones, and they're like dancing with these big knives. And, someone just sent me, something from New Orleans where they had a gun in there. What do you think is the major problem in there as far as, is it violence? Is it cell phones? What's the most major problem in the Florida Department of Corrections?
I say there's a lot of violence, but I would go all the way to the top.
Did they start eliminating, because you said there was more guards back then, did they start eliminating the cops?
Yeah, they changed the way they manned the institutions, cut positions. Then they went to 12-hour shifts, and that was awful. I mean, staff member there for 12 hours, and most time we didn't have enough help, so you're going to keep them 16.
That's crazy. Do you think the cops just are like, I don't even care, I'm just here for a paycheck now, majority of them?
Some of them are young, inexperienced. That's the main thing is inexperienced. So I didn't make sergeant till I had 10 years in. I mean, it took 10 years to make sergeant, and then another 10 for me to get promoted to captain. I mean, it took time. And now you'll have a captain that's got 5 years experience. They haven't even learned how to be a correction officer yet, and they're a captain.
What's the pay like?
It's not the best in the world.
So people are walking in there putting their life on the line. I mean, when you got 4 or 5 guys stabbing one guy, I'm sure one of the cops, they don't want to run in there and break that up.
Some won't. But, you know, we got response teams, and you call for assistance. And
so you pretty much they wait until people get there to stop it. They're not doing it one-on-one.
When I was a captain and they would call for a response team and they would call for the shift OIC, I would tell them, wait at the door. Wait till we get enough staff there. Wait till I get there. We'll come up with a plan. Then we'll go in there. But I don't want one officer rush in there trying to break up 2 grown men stabbing each other. Then you got 2 dead prisoners and a dead cop.
You ever see any cops get stabbed in there?
Yeah, just one. I've seen some of them get really assaulted real bad. I had a guy I worked with that got beat in the face with a padlock on a belt.
Wow. What was that for? Was that because he was a nasty guard or just?
No, not really. He's a good correction officer. I mean, I was on paternity leave at the time. He was a good correction officer. I mean, just laid back guy. But I guess the inmate said a few days prior to that, I had actually locked him up for that officer because he had threatened to hurt the officer before. And I actually cuffed him and took him to the captain's office, placed him in confinement. And then when he told everybody that he was going to get the officer when he got out of confinement. And the day he got out, he caught the officer searching his locker. While he was searching his locker, he just run up behind him and hit him in the face with the lock.
Wow. Let me ask you this. I know that Florida led the nation in sexual assaults at one time, right?
Yes, in a lot of institutions. I mean, the one I worked at, I think it was 2016 or 17, we led the nation at Appalachia Correctional.
What were these dudes doing? Just raping dudes?
I was some of it. They, you know, y'all call it commissary in the federal. Yeah. They call it canteen. A lot of that was just borrowing, gambling, having to pay it back. I worked at a psych camp too, so they had a lot of psych meds. So a lot of times they would slip their cellmate some of their psych meds, and when he passed out, he'd wake up raped.
Wow. Is that crazy or what?
Yes.
Were they actually raping dudes at knife point and stuff like that too in there?
Some of them. I mean, years ago we caught one that it was a youthful offender or jitterbug because they had lost their YO status at that time, and we had a juvenile dorm with just anywhere from anyone under 21. We had the youngest one was like 14 in there. Yeah. But it was a pretty good sized inmate, and people talk about they're just kids, and some of those kids are huge.
Got some big.
He had a knife to one's neck and was choking him out. He'd already pulled his own pants down and was pulling the other kid's pants down, and he was going to rape him when they got caught.
Did you ever catch anybody doing that?
No.
Never.
No.
So when a guy rapes a young kid in prison in Florida and you come, I'm sure you were the captain. I mean, you talked to them.
Yeah, when they tell you that they've been raped, and you've got that Prison Rape Elimination Act, you call the SORT nurse, you have to go through a whole bunch of investigative parties. It's a whole procedure for it.
So, I mean, have you ever had to interview one of the dudes that, like, raped someone?
No, I've never had to.
You never went down there, locked him up, put cuffs on him, took him to the captain's office?
There was other captains that have, but I've never actually had to do that.
How about victims? You ever had to talk to any of the victims?
No.
Well, good thing, right?
Yeah, it is a pretty good thing.
So I also heard about this thing, and I talked to that dude the other day, you know, that white boy lockdown radio. They said they used to have these people called the war daddies, and they're June-Junes. Were you familiar with that?
Yeah, more or less. I heard what he was saying about a June-June, and that started all the youthful offender count. And to say they get $75 a week they can draw from the commissary, a June-June will go to the window, and he'll spend $75 and give 50 of that away just for protection.
So he gets to
or whatever, or have his parents send money to another inmate's account. They say war daddies. Most of them has a punk.
So, and I also asked him, and how were the white guys in that system, man? Were they punks?
Some.
Did you have some that would fight?
Punks in every one. I mean, it depends. It depends on where they're from, how many there are. I mean, I've seen several of them that nobody would mess with. Nobody.
You ever seen any good fights?
Yes. Good fights.
Yeah.
Yeah, they last a little bit, not long.
So let me ask you this. You're the captain. You guys ever get fights on video and you guys watch them in the office after everybody goes to the hole or whatever?
Yeah, we had cameras everywhere. At the end of my career, I mean, we had cameras everywhere. So that's the one thing. If they called a fight away, once you broke the fight up, you had to use force. So you have to burn the video for the use of force paperwork and all that. Yeah, we'd watch them.
Hey, someone else told me they used to have like a fight club down there in some of them prisons. Is that true?
Maybe the inmates did. I don't know. I mean, not that I participated in or anything, or anybody of my staff members.
You ever had to put your hands on a prisoner?
Oh yeah.
I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that in a real way.
Yeah, I mean, like I told you earlier, on the phone, I started in the early '90s, and when I first started, there were some brutal cops working at that time. I mean, and it occurred.
Back then, it was old school, though, right? Sometimes you could take your belt off and fight with a prisoner,
and that's happened several times. And most times, it was respectful. And when it happened, it come out of a closet or something. Nothing was said. There's no winner or loser. And I've seen correction officers get the raw end of that too. So
you've seen it go both ways.
Both ways.
Well, you guys are known for football and all that stuff down. You got some big boys down around both ends, right?
Yeah, on both sides.
Yeah. You ever worked in a prison where something happened and you were nervous, kind of like, damn, this could really be a bad situation?
Yeah, we've had several riots and major disturbances. I mean, not really scared, but sometimes you're a little nervous or apprehensive, and you really don't realize that until after it's over. And you're like, man, that could have went really bad.
Well, you got a family to go home to, so I mean, when things get, I've been in situations where I'm like, damn, this could really go bad right now. And like you said, I don't know, maybe not scared, but definitely nervous, like, damn, what's going to happen? And I'm sure you've been there, right?
Yes, but I had a lot of choices. I could make a choice whether to participate or not participate. I mean, sometimes prisoners don't have that option. Yeah. I mean, you may have to participate.
You ever had to reprimand any of your officers below you for doing bullshit?
Yeah, I'd get on to them. I mean, I was always fair with the inmates. I mean, if they were required to have something, do your job, provide that. Provide what you're supposed to do. You know what we got to do every day? Just do it.
Just do it. See, that's what people, when I was in prison, that's what I did. I respected the cops that were the same every day. Don't come in and be all right today, be an asshole tomorrow. If I got something coming, just give it to me. I'm not going to ask for anything extra. And, I think a lot of prisoners feel that way. Look, just stay the same and give me what I got coming and we're good.
Yeah, I could be hard, but I was fair. I never lied to inmates. I never told them I was going to do something I couldn't do for them. And like I told you on the phone, I provided anything they were required to have. I made sure they got it. And that was up to include a can of chemical agents if they wanted that. I mean, I did what they wanted.
So some people might not know what that means. That means if they got out of line and you had to use that mace, you used it.
I would use it. If like y'all used it, what was it, SHU?
Yeah.
And we had administrative and disciplinary confinement. We called it confinement. So, I mean, a lot of times they'd show out in confinement, and my confinement staff called and said they had an inmate showing out, and I went down there and talked to him, and he continued on. We're going straight to chemical agents.
Who talking?
It's over at that point.
You ever had any famous people over there in Florida prisons?
Trick Daddy was at ACI.
He was there when you were there?
Yes. He was at Appalachia West unit, and I was at the East unit back then.
What was he like as a prisoner?
They said he just on the rec yard rapping and beating on, just doing what he does now. Not bad at all.
Did that ever piss you off when you were working a housing unit? People were banging on the table and rapping, and it used to drive me nuts.
I hated football season when I worked there. Football and basketball season, I hated.
Tell the people why, because I know why, but they don't know.
That's the loudest time. I got a lot of gambling going on, a lot of losing, and a lot of fights, and just the noise level is awful.
The noise level is awful. I know, believe me, even in federal prison, it's just like, I love football, but you know what? When you're locked in and you're going to sleep and there's a late night game on and people are screaming and kicking the door at 11:30 at night and you wake up, you're like, yeah, people don't understand what that noise level's like when you got 50, 60, 70 dudes in one little small unit banging on metal doors. We used to watch TV from our cells too, so these guys be kicking the doors, banging. Yeah, it was something that drove me nuts too as I got older, right?
Yeah, and y'all had headphones, right? Where you had to listen to it on your headphones. And see, ours is just an open TV area. And they'd be 60, 65 people piled in a little room built for about 30.
You ever see a guy in there where you're like, you felt bad for him? Got stabbed or something? You're like, man, that guy was an all right guy. He was respectful to you on the compound?
I met a prisoner. He was in the SOS suicide cell. And he had actually got sentenced way outside the guidelines, like a 20-year sentence. I didn't really feel bad for him, but he had cut himself really good. And he had a legitimate, probably needed a 3-year sentence.
Yeah.
But, and you see people that get sentenced way outside the guidelines.
Oh, 100%. I'm doing a case right now where guy got 50 years. He was 30 years old. They gave him 50 years. The judge gave him, he pled guilty. The judge gave him the maximum sentence for the robbery, which was 20 years after he pled guilty. And then on the gun charges, he's supposed to get 5 for the first one and 25 for the second. And then the judge gave him 15 for the first gun and 25 for the second. So I think it was more than 50 years. But, I mean, they just, yeah, I think people deserve a second chance sometimes. What do you think about that, being that you were in corrections all them years? You think people deserve a second chance?
I've seen people get second chances and do really well. I've seen lifers that get out and do real well. We had Pride there. I mean, y'all call it Unicore or something like that, but you had an outside company come in and he worked for Pride, and he got a mandatory 25 years. No chance parole till after 25 years. And I think he ended up doing 30 before he got out on parole and doing real well.
You ever seen a guy that was in your prison like that, and he goes, he makes parole and he's going home? I mean, kind of like that Shawshank Redemption stuff. You ever seen anyone break down like, damn, I don't really want to go home. I've been here all these years.
Yeah, when I first started, there was a guy, he didn't even realize it was time for him to go home. I mean, he could have went home a lot sooner until he got in the law library. And he was the same way, just kind of dumbfounded on what to do when he gets out.
That's sad, ain't it?
It is sad.
Some people just want to stay in prison because that's all they know.
They make the best orderlies, though, those old timers with long sentences.
Yeah, unfortunately, right? They're waxing floors, and that's their life. They take care of it. They act like it's theirs, right?
Yeah, but they don't see anything and they don't hear anything.
So working as a captain, you used to have people come to your office and try to tell on people?
I didn't deal with snitches. I didn't really deal with them. I mean, if they'll tell on another inmate, they'll tell on me. So I didn't deal with them. Now, I had inmates that most respected me. And if something was going to be serious, really serious, I mean, they wouldn't snitch on who was going to do it. They'd say, man, you might want to watch out for this group or that group. Kind of, I mean, nobody wants a big disturbance going on because then they're going to be locked down.
Yeah.
But not really snitching on each other. I didn't deal with that. I mean, I didn't want to know if I can't find it on my own, I didn't need to know it.
So you have had people come down there and try, and you just tell them, hey, listen, I don't want to hear it.
No, I don't want no part of it.
I've seen that before, in federal prison where the cops have told, man, just get out of here, man.
And a lot of times they'll do it to get out of trouble. Hey, Captain, I'll get you a knife, or I can tell on this, I can get you a cell phone. Like, we go on cell phones and do a search and get those any day of the week. And knives are a dime a dozen.
So they weren't doing nothing special.
No, it's not special giving me a knife when I can go find 10 on my own.
And in their own minds, they thought it was.
Yes.
So when you guys did stuff like that and you found knives and cell phones, did you guys ever get bonuses or anything like that?
No, there's no bonus in that.
It's just part of the day. Part of the day. What do you think was the biggest threat in prison? Do you think cell phones were a threat?
I would say that K2 was the biggest threat to me. I mean, if you've seen people on that stuff, you take a small guy and it'd take 4 or 5 people to hold him down.
Oh, I've seen it. I mean, when they were sending it into prisons, right, in the Florida prisons, do you know what they were smoking? Do you guys know?
I know some of it, but I know they were spraying it with Raid, wall spray, all kind of stuff.
When they were spraying that stuff with Raid, what were you guys thinking? Like the cops, were they like, what are these guys retarded? They're smoking Raid?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But what's crazy is if we've had inmates die on that, and the inmates would see him die, And that's what they would want to get. They would run to try to get the short off of that. Hey, man, that's that fire there. It killed him. And that's what they wanted.
Was that a big problem in there, K2?
Yeah, it's a real big problem. I mean, just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it definitely came out of nowhere. Were people in there sneak thieving, stealing people's stuff?
Oh, yes, a lot of thievery.
Yeah?
Yeah, a lot of stealing. And just like you said, and when I made captain, I went from the main unit, I went more of a work camp type area, and we sent, I don't know, 100, 150 inmates outside the gate every day to work. So when, people go to food service to work or wherever they go to work, that's when the ones in the dorm would steal from them. A lot of strong arm robbery too.
Oh yeah, whatever. What?
Yeah, just walk up there and knock somebody out and grab their commissary bag and run.
That's it.
That's it.
Sounds like a no holds barred type of prison, right?
Sometimes it was.
Do you feel like the cops lost control of the prison system there?
I wouldn't put it on. I wouldn't put it on the line staff, the front line staff. I would put it on the people above them. I mean, when you cut positions, when you're not giving people proper pay raises, and you got to give people a reason to be there.
Let me ask you this. So, from your perspective, when guys are in there getting robbed, getting beat up, I mean, do you want to stop that stuff? You're like, hey, man, we want to stop this as a whole because it creates bigger problems for you guys, right?
Some. Yeah, I mean, I've seen one of your shows where you talked about a lieutenant told you to get a knife or would tell him to get a knife.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can cuss on your show or not, but, I worked the orientation unit and we'd get new ones in and I would tell them, I mean, it's either fuck or fight. And if you can't fight and you don't want to fuck, get a knife. I mean, that's as best I could tell them.
So them guys are in there just taking guys under their wing. So it's kind of like what you used to see on the movies, right? They're like, hey.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Wow. Hey, I mean, I've heard that. Fight or fuck, one of the two, right?
Yeah, and if you don't want to do the other and you can't fight, hey, get a knife.
You ever have people walk in that system and start crying right there when they get there?
Hey, we've had them come off the bus, and sometimes we'd pick them out. Hey, send your necklace and send that on, or you need to check in. You're not going to make it.
You would actually see people and say, you're not going to make it here?
You're not going to make it. Check in.
So what happens when a prisoner checks in Florida? Do they go to the hole and...
They're going to go to the hole, and most times going to let them out. I mean, if they don't have a legitimate threat on them, I mean, eventually they're going to have to do their time. You can't run forever.
So how long would they usually sit in the hole until they end up going to another prison when they check in?
It depends. I mean, you'll do a 30-day review, up 60-day review, and then depending on bed space at other prisons or where you're going to send them at or whatever their need is, it could take a while.
I've seen people sit in federal prison. Back then, if you checked in, they used to keep you in the hole for a year. You couldn't get a transfer for a year.
It's not like, we wouldn't do it that bad. It wouldn't be that nowhere near like that in Florida.
What was the food like down there?
Horrible. At one time, in the early 90s, it was good. I mean, I would eat in the chow hall in the early 90s. And once they privatized food service, I wouldn't eat that. I wouldn't eat it.
So who was doing the food service there? Was it that R-Mark?
Airmark started it off, and once the state took it back, I mean, we didn't really take it back. We would have we did take it back. We didn't only have one security officer in there though, but then we had free world people. They were hired to actually be the food service director and the people who run the kitchen.
Food was horrible.
It was.
It's sad, ain't it? Because food in prison is comfort. If you feed the people, I feel like they're going to lay down. They ain't going to be running around robbing people. They would benefit so much more if they fed people food that you could actually eat. It would benefit the prison.
I think so. And it's pretty much like the feds. You had a hamburger day and you had chicken day and you had a couple other meals that were good. A lot of times they'd eat the breakfast.
What was the breakfast like if they're eating that?
Some of it good, some of it not so good.
That's the one, that's the problem. Like you said, the administration, these people ain't never worked security a day in their life. And they're up there calling the shots. They think they know everything. They went to college. They read some bullshit in a book. And they don't have a clue about corrections, about prison, about prisoners, about cops, about correctional officers. Do you feel that way? Like they don't have a clue?
Some of them don't. I mean, they're making decisions. And I mean, they're trying to run it like a business. I mean, but you're not taking care of the people at the bottom. And you tie your warden's hand down. At each institution have a warden, and you tie their hands.
You ever have to, you ever express your opinion to anybody up there, like the warden, or say, hey, look, this needs to be fixed?
You felt the same way. Everybody feels the same way about it. I mean, some of them are going to do whatever. I mean, it's just a lost cause sometimes to complain. Just I had a job to do. I was fortunate that I worked for really good warden. I worked for really good wardens my whole career, so I was very fortunate in that aspect.
Yeah. You missed the job?
You know what? It's crazy that you brought that up. Sometimes I do miss the job. I do miss it. I miss the people. It's a routine. It's the same routine every day, but something new happening every day at the same time.
You know, I say that because when I was in prison my last 10 years, what I did was I pretty much lived in the law library, lived in the education department. And I'm out here now and I work 12, 15 hours a day. And you know what? It's my routine. It's been my routine. And I don't mind coming in my office and doing legal work all day. It doesn't bother me. You know, I take breaks and spend some time with my family and my wife, and I take care of my mother every single day. But at the end of the day, that's my routine. So I can understand what you're saying. I'm sure a lot of people watching this video can understand the routine.
Yeah, even when I would get off work and go home, I had the same routine what I would do every day when I watch the same shows on TV every day. I didn't deviate from any of my schedule. I kept it the same. I still do that today. I catch myself doing that today.
I mean, you got to be doing something different though during the day now. You're doing a little fishing. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small country town, and that's fishing and hunting was it.
I'm going to ask you a question that a lot of people probably want to know the answer to, right? You working in a southern prison. A lot of people probably think, "Oh, you're just a racist," right?
Yeah, that's commonplace.
Do you feel like people used to feel that way about you?
Some, yeah. I mean, that's what they all assume.
But that's not really how it is it?
No, I mean, I learned at an early age in my career, and mostly with other staff members. You know, if you're in a pile and things are going real bad for you, it really don't matter what color the hand is that reaches down and pulls you out.
I just seen a video where a bunch of the soldiers were leaving Afghanistan, right? And they were crowded into a plane. It was white, Hispanic, black. They were all sleeping on top of each other. And someone said something like that in that little meme, like, it really don't matter, man. Black lives matter, white lives matter, all lives matter. And these people, take a look at what they just did. They went in there and saved a bunch of people, and now they're sleeping on top of each other. So
I'll tell you a story about a sergeant I helped get promoted up to captain. When I first got promoted to captain, I went to night shift, and I was fortunate on night shift because every one of my staff members had 10, 15, 20 years experience. So I had this one sergeant, and I walked in, he's a big guy too. I'm like, Sarge, you want to just be a dorm sergeant or you want to get promoted? He said, Captain, I want to get promoted. I said, well, I'm going to make you my assistant and you're going to help me do the rosters. I'm going to show you how to do use of force. And we're just going to go through everything and I'm going to help you out. And I showed him everything, man, everything I could show him. And in 2016, my mom passed away. This guy ended up being my best friend. And a black guy comes to my house, sits on my couch, and cries with me. So he went from being my best friend to my brother at that point. And now he's a captain, man. And I talk to him on a regular basis, and he tells me thank you all the time for helping him get promoted.
I respect that. Let me ask you this. You think they're ever going to fix that Department of Corrections down there in Florida where these young jitterbugs ain't running around stabbing each other and cutting out knives? And
I don't know. I talked to some of my other retired friends, and we pretty much got the same opinion. It's broke. I don't know that they can fix it. I don't know without redoing the whole system that they can ever fix it.
You ever have to talk to anybody's parents when they get murdered in prison?
No, I've done several. I never talked to their parents. So we had the chaplain and other people do that. But I've had to do several death notices when an inmate's family has passed away.
Yeah, what's that like?
It's not really. It's really horrible. I mean, that's the worst I've ever felt in that job, I would say.
When you got to tell someone that their mother passed away.
Yes, or their brother or their father. I mean, it's not. You could see the biggest guy cry at that time.
It's real, man. It's raw. It's real. That's why I do what I do with this channel, man. So I'm going to close the show, but I want to ask you: is there anything that you want to say before we end?
Yeah, Chad, I've seen some big gangsters crying as I've loaded them up on a ambulance or a helicopter, begging me not to let them die. Some of the biggest people. Nobody wants to die in prison.
And that's a real message for kids that are out here running around. They just killed 2 people. Well, they shot 2 people in front of my sister's house. One of them died today. He got shot 2 days ago. And now, you know, he's dead. The people that shot him are probably going to prison. And like you said, some of them dudes are the biggest gangsters and they break down. No one wants to die in prison. And that's an important message. I want people to think about that. You come from the other side, you know, from corrections, from being a cop. And I bring other dudes on here that have been in prison. But, I mean, that says it all right there. Nobody wants to die in prison alone. No one. So I want people to think about that. I'm going to close the show. Keith, I'm going to thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your perspective. And honestly, I think you're a pretty good guy, man. So with that, I'm going to close the show. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Hit that subscribe button. We're out. Until tomorrow.